President. My name is Muhammad Adamu Aleru. I represent Kebbi Central. I'm talking about constitutional point of order, not our constitutional point of order.
Okay.
Constitutional point of order 41. With the permission, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I read Section 41. Every citizen of Nigeria is entitled to move freely throughout Nigeria and to reside in any part thereof, and no citizen of Nigeria shall be expelled from Nigeria or refuse entry thereto or exit therefrom. Subsection 2. Nothing in subsection 1 of this section shall invalidate in any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. A2A, imposing restrictions on residence or movement of any person who has committed or is reasonably suspected to have committed a criminal offense in order to prevent him from leaving Nigeria, or providing for the removal of any person from Nigeria to any other country. Mr. President, I raise this point of order simply because of what Senator Zam has stated in the bill, which is contrary to the provisions of Section 41 of this Constitution. He says the bill proposes that ranches be established in pastoralist states, in pastoralist state of origin, without forcing it upon other states or communities that do not have pastoralist citizens. Mr. President,
your point of order is noted, but if you read, that's
let me make a point before you can rule.
I am interpreting the section for you.
Yes.
The section refers to every citizen.
Yes.
Cows are not citizens of Nigeria. So,
Mr. President, cows are not citizens of Nigeria.
You didn't hear what I said. Senator Aleru, are you arguing with me?
No.
I said cows are not citizens. The section you are referring to is talking about citizens of Nigeria.
Yes.
And cows are not citizens of Nigeria. Cows can come in from Niger, they can come in from Chad, anywhere. But cows are not citizens. So your point of order is noted, but rejected. You want to make contribution on the debate? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not against this bill, but I'm against the idea of restricting movement of Nigerians from one state to another.
No, that would not happen.
Right now, citizens of Nigeria are allowed to move from one state to another to establish business without any hindrance whatsoever.
It affects everywhere in Nigeria.
Yes.
Nobody can restrict
pastoralists and citizens of Nigeria, they can move to North Central, Northwest, Northeast, South, and establish their business without...
They can do so, but not with AK-47.
Yeah. No. I'm not talking about criminals.
You don't understand. I'm saying that we are going to delete that particular portion.
Yes.
That says that brings about restriction. So, and I want to refer that to Senator Sam. He has to delete that part. So let's not deviate from the debate.
Let me conclude my contribution. Let me conclude, please. Ranching should be seen as a private business. Government has no business going into ranching. Even the cattle route, which Senator Karimi mentioned, used to be the practice when we had 19 northern states. It's one state under northern Nigeria. But then that was the time when we had cattle route, beginning from maybe from Sokoto up to Lokoja. But now the states have been balkanized into 19 states. Northern Nigeria has been balkanized into 19 states, and each state has control of its land. So you cannot really bring the issue of cattle route for now. It is not applicable at all, because it touches on the territorial integrity of some states. Some states will not allow it. So ranching should be seen as a business, and government has no business going into it. And perhaps when we go to the public hearing, this will become very, very clear. So I rest my case, Mr. President.
Thank you. And the here,
Point of order, sir.
the civil senator Zam.
Information.
The civil senator Zam.
Information. Information, sir.
That erupt from pastoralists and farmers' interaction in Nigeria, which have assumed a warlike dimension with far-reaching negative impact on the people and the country as a whole. As stakeholders in the Nigeria project and elected representatives of the people, we cannot afford to look on while the country burns into ashes as a result of violent clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders. Doing so would amount to abdication of our statutory and leadership responsibilities. The menace of farmers and herders crisis can easily be cured through a legislative therapy banning open grazing in Nigeria. My dear colleagues, historically, farmers-herders conflicts date back to pre-colonial times. However, these violent conflicts have become more severe, intense, and frequent in recent decades due to a number of factors, which include, but not limited to, the following: population pressure, climate change, livestock mobility and marketability, absence of laws on pastoralism, inefficient conflict management mechanisms, proliferation of arms and urbanization, etc. Reports have it that since 2016, more than 4,000 lives have been lost as a result of farmers-herders conflicts. Also, over 5 million people have been displaced, particularly in the Middle Belt region and other parts of northern Nigeria. With dwindling productivity in crops production and herds, this conflict has reportedly cost Nigeria an average of $3.5 million, or 47% of its internally generated revenues. The effect of herders-farmers conflicts and its implication on food security in Nigeria is already staring us in the face as a result of high cost of food items, which is almost becoming out of the reach of the common man. Whereas other countries with huge farmers and herders populations, including Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, have passed pastoral laws and codes which have helped to mitigate the incidence of clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders. This situation is unfortunately treated with kid gloves in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, you will observe that the converging dynamics of demography, technology, and urbanization have collectively complicated the hitherto simple and fraternal relationship between our local farmers and nomadic pastoralists. There is an unprecedented increase in the number of farmers who need more portions of land to farm, and herds
with larger herds of cattle who also need more space for grazing, whereas land is fixed. Mr. President, the absence of a regulatory framework or legislation on pastoralism and livestock mobility generally has created a chaotic scenario of survival of the fittest between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders in Nigeria. My dear colleagues, this is not acceptable in the 21st century civilized world. Mr. President, available data indicate that India, as at 2023, had about 308 million heads of cattle, and it is the world's #1 country in animal husbandry, followed by Brazil, China, and USA. In Africa, Ethiopia has the highest number with 68 million cows as at 2022. Nigeria has a paltry 20.9 million heads as at 2022. Yet, we are faced with the greatest problem of herders-farmers conflagrations. Paradoxically, the Nigerian state has continued to pay lip service to the challenge of farmers and herders attacking without addressing it in concrete terms in line with international best practices of animal husbandry. Every effort is laced with maneuvers that speak to our ethnic and political biases or sentiments, thus resisted by the people. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this 10th Senate has a date with history. We must rise in one accord to sort out this problem of herders, farmers, violent conflicts that would, if allowed to linger longer, consume even more lives and properties than the Civil War of 1967 to 1970. Therefore, now is the time to put a permanent stop to the endless cycle of attacks and counterattacks by our people and their external collaborators. Mr. President, now is the time to adopt international best practices in animal husbandry. My distinguished colleagues, now is the time to to bring about a law to stop open grazing. It is old-fashioned, hazardous, burdensome, and must be discarded. The bill therefore proposes ranching as the only viable alternative for cattle breeding in Nigeria. The bill advocates for the urgent need to transit from traditional livestock keeping method to the modern methods, which are safer and healthier to both the hares and the header. The bill also proposes that ranches be established in pastoralist state of origin without forcing it upon other states or communities that do not have pastoralists as citizens. The bill proposes that interested parties in livestock business must seek and obtain approvals of their host communities to establish ranches for the purpose of peaceful coexistence. Attached is the compendium as required by Order 76.3 of the Senate Standing Order 2023 as amended. My distinguished colleagues, Mr. President, I urge you to support this bill for a second reading. I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you. Permit me to lead the debate on the bill for an act to regulate animal husbandry and ranches establishment as an antidote for the perennial violent clashes between sedentary farmers and nomadic herders in Nigeria. Mr. President,
Njuma Goje, representing Gombe Central and Gombe State. Mr. President, I stand to fully support this bill because the issue of farmers, herders clash is a national issue, and this bill happens to come from a senator from Benue State. Benue State is one of the states that we had series of clashes and hostilities regarding the farmers' herders issue. But I want to urge our colleagues and Nigerians generally to approach this issue of cattle ranching in good faith. It should not be seen as an issue that's going to be thrown away to some particular states because the Fulanis happen to come from those states. Because in the debate, the submission of the promoter of this bill, he said that the ranches can only be made from the states where the owners of the cows come from. I know what he's trying to do. We can't do it that way. Well, these Fulanis are Nigerians. They don't even benefit from government. They don't enjoy schools. They don't enjoy hospitals. They don't enjoy any roads. All the housing programs done by government, and they don't enjoy them, nothing. So to just throw them away like that because they happen to come from they are assumed to have come from states that may not have even enough water, enough grazing area. And you say you can only be done in that state. I think it's not going to work. If we want to solve this problem, which is a national issue, we should approach it with open mind. Where you have enough land, where you have land that can serve as cattle ranch with water and enough grasses and other food for the animals, we should be magnanimous enough and realistic enough to encourage and in fact support the establishment of ranches in those areas. But to confine them to one area it will not solve the problem. So what I said, we must approach this matter in good faith. But to say, because I know if you say that you only want to do it in areas, maybe there are very few states in Nigeria that will be willing, that Fulani can claim to have come. But they are Nigerians. So of course, if you go to Oyo State or even Ogun State or even Abia, you get Fulanis who speak Igbos, Fulani who speak Yorubas, who don't go anywhere outside those areas. What do you tell them? Because they are not indigenous to that place, they don't deserve any rights in that place? No, I disagree. So please, my colleagues and Nigerians, if we want to solve this problem, we should solve it head frontally. Secondly, some weeks ago we discussed this issue, a similar issue like this, and we even set up an ad hoc committee to come out with recommendations on the establishment of grazing areas. I think this being the case, we need to take a position, either to harmonize these two issues so that we don't have to continue discussing. Let's do it once and for all. The ad hoc committee and this issue we are discussing, I believe, in my opinion, should be harmonized so that we solve this problem once and for all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. If we are making a national law, it has to apply nationally. For instance, if you go between Umuahia and Enugu on that route, you will see a large population of pastoralists. They have a place there where people come to buy cows and all that. The meat is needed by the whole country. So establishing ranches cannot be limited to a section as if they are the ones that eat the meat alone. If we are trying to solve a problem, we must look at it holistically, and the whole country must be involved. That is where we come in terms of lawmaking, so that we make it almost mandatory for every state to have one. So we can do that when it is time for us to look at the nitty-gritty, so that it's not something you push to a particular area, because everybody needs this meat. Senator Kawu?
I will appreciate my colleagues just noting that the issues was discussed just a few weeks ago, and today it has reached the second reading. I think we must be commended. This issue, I believe, if we handle it with all the seriousness that is deserved, we will begin to see respite in the farmers-herders clashes. But distinguished Senate President, please, we should expand the role of the Commission, not only at establishing ranches. There is need for extension services there is need for bringing better breeds of cattle. An average cattle of a pastoral Fulani man gives you less than 1 liter of milk a day, as against 30 liters of the hybrid cattle. And this must be taken into consideration if we are going to make it a source of livelihood. Because as it is today, it's just a way of life, not necessarily livelihood for these people. So this is highly commendable, sir. And we need to emphasize, apart, what are the conditions that will give private ranching also the help they needed to go ahead. As you know, everybody is trying to run away from government-funded companies because they are not always being very well managed. We need to consider a way and manner for which private ranchers will be access to this commission, and they will get the necessary help for them to expand and establish ranches. Thank you very much, the Senate President. This is a wonderful bill. I hope we live to see it pass into law. Thank you, sir.
The Senate President, my name is Karimi Sunday Steve. I'm from Kogi State. I represent the people of Kogi West. I want to appreciate my colleague, a true son of North Central, for bringing this bill at this time. Mr. President, you know, about 2 weeks ago, you handled something similar to this in a motion, where we call for a national summit. We all know that this is a national problem. It is not just a state problem. It's a problem that is ravaging all over our nation. And we cannot just sit down as responsible parliamentarians without finding a solution to it. Thank you for your able leadership, sir. First of all, in the north, we used to have a cattle route with open grazing those days. Those cattle routes, they have been taken over by communities. And now, no cattle routes. The cattle, they are all over the place. You will even see them on Abuja Street. You see them all over the place. They enter people's land, farmland, and causing problems all over the country. This bill must be allowed to have its place. We are going to consider this bill appropriately. All states must be ready to have cattle ranch. You know, the last government, they set up something that they called Rugard, and they gave, some states said they wouldn't go with it, and they rejected it. But when this bill is passed into law, by the time we are doing the public hearings, sir, we are going to invite stakeholders all over the country to ensure that we treat this issue as a national problem. So that's all these killings going on all over the place in the name of cattle ranching, in the name of kidnapping. We are going to find a solution to it. We cannot continue like this. This is a responsible government. This government has started well. Previous government, they've not been able to find solution to it. I believe the leadership of National Assembly, headed by you, and the leadership of this country, headed by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, will find a solution to this problem. We are going to start with this bill, and we are going to pass it into law by God's grace. Thank you.
For the major thing.
And I want to thank Senator Titus Zam for drawing our attention to a very critical part of our national life that is leading to a disintegration of our lives through the incessant herder-farmer clash destruction of plants and all that by those. And indeed, that has also led to the invasion of Nigeria by those who call themselves herders but are not Nigerian citizens. I recall, as a member of this Senate, that this bill at a particular time was also introduced on the floor of this Senate by Senator Kwankwaso. I recall also the problem that was following the debate, and that problem is what we will need to tackle if we have to get to the nitty-gritty of this bill. While I agree that now is the time for us to stop open grazing, it also means that this is also the time for us to take another look at the law that makes land to be in the hands of states. Because there's no way you are going to be able to establish a ranch in a state if the state government says that they don't want it. I'm glad that Senator Zam has said that those who are sedentary, in states of origin of the herders, should be able to establish ranches. And of course, he has also given us the costing. But in order to do this, we must go back and look at the law. Because if we don't deal with that law, merely asking people to go, if they want to establish ranch, to now go and talk with those. No one owns land. It's the state governments that own land. That means that even if you agree with the owners or settlers or a community or that, if the state government does not give its consent, then it means that you will not be able to go forward with it. So as we consider this, I also want us to look at the Land Use Act as an impediment to this particular very wonderful bill, to ensure that we can get and put to rest this matter of herder-farmer clash. And I can see why. And I want to also recall to all my colleagues that at a particular time, the former governor of Kano State, Ganduje, suggested to everyone that he has enough land in Kano State for all the herders in Nigeria to come and graze. But of course, what happened is that some people are using these herders and all that to destabilize this country. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at home in my own local government in Obingwa, far down in the southern part of Nigeria in Abia State. Some women came to me and said that the herders were bringing their cows to finish up all their planted, and that there's nothing they can do. That even when they come there, they will threaten them that they are going to kill and maim, and there's nothing they can do about it. They wanted for me to do something about it. So I had to go to the local government chairman and said, let's go and see the DPO and let us, and they had to go to plead with those herders. That is the extent to which this has reached. Everyone in Nigeria, if you go from the west to the coast, all the way up to the middle belt, and you go up to the north, farmers are under threat. And what it has led to is the food crisis that we have today. So I support this bill, and I say, as we consider it, let us also look at all the elements that will make us bring out a bill that will be for the interests of Nigeria. I so support.
Going to the clause by clause consideration of the bill that we must have a public hearing. We must bring in all the stakeholders, the Farmers Association, the Mitiala, and then we must bring in the state governments and all the stakeholders so that everybody will have a say. And we must have a holistic discussion on this. And then also, like Senator the Civil Senator Baribe pointed out, if there is need to tinker with the Constitution in terms of the Land Use Act, which is in the Constitution, to enable us create a clause that will allow easy access to land for ranching, we should do so. And then we should also know that many people may not have money to go into ranching. And it's something that we should do gradually. But whatever it is, when we go into the major issue of discussing it at the public hearing, we'll get more information and get stakeholders' opinions. Distinguished Senator Goje.